Alright, let's get into it. This is YuJing Vanilla against Japanese Sectorial Army, JSA. We're playing Firefight, one of the new missions from HSN 3. This is a look at the table. We're using Garth's table mat for this one, the Tundra ice setting, so it's a chance for me to sort of have a little bit of a different perspective on the table in terms of visuals. This is a view from one of the deployment zones. We decided to make one of the zones accessible for this building. Now, pay important attention to the fact that the deployment zones in this scenario are actually 16 inches up, which will prove to be pretty crucial in this game. So if you're looking at this side of the table here, those buildings can definitely be deployed on by troops, and of course the crags, you can go behind them. Let's go to the next one. So this is the other side of the table. There's a lot less here to use, but again, 16 inches up, you can actually reach that building to the right hand side and deploy behind it, and there are plenty of crates and there's a small building there to put guys on and prone behind, so I think there's more than enough defense. But of course, usually the player going first is going to, or the player going second is at least going to have the advantage of the better table side, shall we say. Alright, the next photo that I'll show you here has Garth's army deployed, JSA all ready to go. He's got the Arigoto motorbikes, he's got the Rushui, Yojimbo, and the Kaisotsu linked in with missile launcher and Yuriko, as well as a TR bot in that little building encampment, as well as running a war core. So that's what he's got along here. Next image, it's his turn 1 and he's taking first turn, and he's got a superior infiltrating TO camo marker on the bridge. Note that again, 16 inches means that he can't actually get as close to my table edge as he normally would be able to, so it's an interesting nuance of the scenario interacting with superior infiltration. The next image shows you a look at my side of the table. I've got a lot of Shaolin monks, 4 of them in fact, and on the right hand side some orange camo markers, the mandatory Guangxi, never leave home without them. Even a normal camouflage marker up on the central building next to the panoply, which we decided to put on top of the building. Normally we wouldn't put some objectives there, but we have decided to in this case. Both of the robots you can see in this photo, bottom right and bottom left, are the minesweepers. Minesweeper baggage bots. Next image shows you the left-hand side of my table where the other Shaolins are hanging out. You got some some more Guangxi, Zanshi, even a Rui Shui right at the center bottom. Another image here, it's Garth moving out with Yojimbo, who is impetuous, and of course, as is my style at the moment, I'm not leaving any troops to ARO his advance, so he just moves around with impetuous. I know I've probably touched on it before, but the reason why I don't actually leave any models out there to sort of just plug off AROs is because it just gives him a chance to easily kill them with whatever model he chooses to do that with, and then I start my turn with less orders. I'd much rather defend my flanks with chain rifles and just punish him with cheaper troops as he spends a lot of orders to come over to my side of the table, as opposed to him just spending 1 or 2 orders and gunning me down with a 4 burst or 5 burst link team or something like that. Alright, moving to the next photo, one of his motorcycles here is moving out pretty close to the middle of the board, and he's got one of them with a Spitfire, one of them with a combi rifle low. He declared at the start of the turn that he was not going to be using any impetuous for one of the motorcycles because it did not have impetuous, so that reveals to me that it's actually a Luduan using holo projector level 1 to pretend to be a bike, so that's quite fun. Note that in this picture at the bottom right you can see the silhouette token, the S4, being used to represent where the bike moves to, so on the right hand side that's where he starts from, that's where he ends up. Next image again, okay, so we are actually putting the Luduan on the table, and he moves around to destroy what he thinks is a camo marker Raiden, but it's actually a mine because it's a Guilang mine lader that I'm using, and the mine goes off and destroys the Luduan, so a little bit of an error play by my opponent not figuring out that I'm using a mine there, but fair enough, it's not always the easiest thing to spot. He does gun down the Guangxi in the same activation though. Next image, Tio Kamamaka, highly likely to be Shinobu Kitsune, moves across the bridge and she is prone. My lieutenant is the left hand side and the Celestial Guard with Guangxi control device is in the middle. So it looks likely that I'll be losing both of them. And indeed, my opponent throws down some smoke grenades. After 3 or 4 orders, he has killed both of these models, so I will be starting my first turn and lost a lieutenant. Having said that, not particularly worried, because this is not so much a press the buttons mission, it's firefight. I have to end the game with more troops than him to succeed. I also want to have killed more lieutenants and specialists and get classifieds and panoplies to get 10 out of 10, but the overall goal is to trade effectively, get the value trades where I trade smaller models for his more expensive models. And Shinobu, having killed just these 2 models so far, hasn't actually earned her points back, and if I kill her in return, then that will be advantageous for me. Next image, okay, we have another superior infiltrating camo marker, TO marker, which has to be either an Oniwaban or a ninja or Saito Togan. So we'll find out shortly what it is, but he can't attack this model that I've got here prone because it's also in marker state. Next image, Shinobu is trying to gain line of sight to some of my models, and we decided that if she moves too close to the wall, the very back portion of this, the cylinder, the volume of my Ruishu will be able to shoot back at her, and combi rifle against the Spitfire with MSV2 is a bit too risky for Shinobu in my opponent's opinion. So I decided to pick another spot along the wall and try and get some kills here, but didn't really quite manage to get a lot done. Another image goes by, and Shinobu has slung back into the corner, gone back into marker mode, and gone prone. So she's feeling pretty safe there, although the Guangxi is going to head up the stairs after its impetuous move. Note that the impetuous move won't take it closer to a marker, so the Guangxi will head down the stairs first and then come back up again, if you guys follow that. Going to another image, he's moving up with his Ruishui, it's not Ruishui, the Arigoto with Spitfire, I meant to say, firing at the Guangxi, who passes his armor saves and actually guts checks behind the back of the top staircase, which actually brings it closer to Shinobu, so that result was really good for me. Alright, now it's on to my turn in the next photo, and I decided to spend my remaining 3 command tokens to turn 3 impetuous models, irregular models into regular models, to give me some orders to use. So I decided to break out my Hacktow HMG from hidden deployment, and if you go to the next image, you see him here at the side of the crate, shooting at the Arigoto and destroying it. So that's 1 model down. In the next image, you can see he's moving around the side of the corner to fire at the TR bot. You're always taking a risk when you do that. There's a 20 to 25% that he'll just crit and you won't crit, and that is what happens. So I can't feel too angry because, after you play a lot of games, that's just going to happen once in a while. Luckily, the Hacktow is not destroyed. He's only got 1 wound left, so the smart play here is not to try it again, because if he dies, then you're relying on the doctor to come in and revive him, which is not a sure thing, especially since I've got no rerolls, having used all my command tokens. So at this point, the Hacktow just goes and finds cover. This scenario is all about just chipping away at your opponent, picking up the points you can, and defending your points. That's really what it's all about. The next image will show you what I've done. I've moved back on top of the building. I haven't had enough orders to go prone, but I did go back into marker state, which I feel is more important than being prone to the state, because it gives you a chance to at least dodge, and it puts them closer to the doctor anyway. And a lot of my other models here, the doctor, the Zanshi hacker, and the Ruishui, going to suppression fire mode. Going to another image, you can see here that my opponent has not spent any orders on his TO camo model here, and the Guilang has carefully moved to the edge, planted a mine, and moved back. The sweet thing about this is that the mine has line of sight to the TO camo marker, but is just placed, so there's no order spent on the mine itself, preventing my opponent from getting a reaction here. We've also got a monk having moved up, but he's staying in prone state as well. The next image has the Hacktow facing a mysterious silhouette token in the distance. What's actually happening here is this is my opponent's turn. He's moved out with Yojimbo, who's being represented by an S4 silhouette token, and the Hacktow shoots back at him with a heavy machine gun. And this is actually pretty even odds. I think it's me needing a 17 against him needing a 16, but he wins the roll and the smoke template goes down. What you don't see from this photo, though, is that he forgot to move his Crazy Koala into the cloud, so when he activates again, I get a free reaction from my Hacktow, who can see the Crazy Koala, and that allows me to dodge prone, which I successfully do, so a bit of a mistake for my opponent. The next image has Yojimbo coming closer over here and getting into a bit of a firefight with a Guangxi. And the Guangxi actually, with his ARO, rolls an 11 for the ARO and shoots him in the eye. Luckily, he's got no wound incapacitation. But unfortunately, already taking a wound here. And the cheap troops doing their job. The whole point of, well, not just the point, part of the reason you take models like the Shaolin and the Guangxi is that when your opponent spends a lot of orders on a fast-moving, heavy-hitting trooper, and they are getting into firefights and exchanges with these cheap troops, you're almost always coming out better off, because if they get lucky and they spend orders to kill you guys, they've traded orders for your cheap models. If you happen to get wounds on their guys, it's just a disaster for them. So overall, in the long run, this is just such a good way of defending your line. Next image, my opponent has a Rui Shui, and as you've picked up from this battle report so far, we are in the habit of using silhouette tokens to show where the models are moving to, just so we can keep their locations intact and measure carefully. So the Rui Shui is moving to the point where the silhouette markers located on the bottom. And another image, he moves to the panoply, tries to pass a whip check but fails, so it doesn't even take any tools from the panoply in this case. Another image again, the Rui Shui attempts to discover the mine, successfully manages it, and destroys it with a volley of shots, so a success there. Next image. So what happens here is that it moves out behind the cover of that hollow projected billboard and attempts to shoot at the Shaolin monk who's standing around nearby. But that brings him within 8 inches of my Zanshi hacker, which he'd forgotten about. So I roll up a gotcha, and he simply shoots his gun, and unfortunately that immobilizes his Rui Shui. Now, unfortunately, when my lieutenant died the previous turn, I promoted a new lieutenant, and I made it the hacker, and I did that because I thought that I wasn't really going to be putting the hacker in harm's way. But I realized as I was doing this that he's still got one order left in his second group, which has his hacker in it, and he realized that too, so he attempted to brain blast my hacker with his hacker, and if he'd succeeded, that would have been my lieutenant gone again. Luckily that didn't happen though, over one order. I mean, the chances of him killing him outright with just one order weren't super high, but I was kind of worried at that point. A little bit of a mistake from me there, but luckily I wasn't punished heavily for it. Luck's been pretty good with that hacking though, because the Ruishi are immobilized, and that's really suiting me just fine. Which brings us to the next slide here. So my turn 2, this scenario allows airborne deployment troopers just to come on any side of the table as if you're Van Zandt, and a Tiger now shows up with a Spitfire and shoots directly into the back of the Ruishui, which is immobile, and destroys it. Then he moves around the corner, if you go to the next image, and picks off the Warcore. He picks off this Kaisotsu hacker here. I think he gets spotlight targeted in the process since it's an ARO. So that's 3 models already eliminated by the Tiger, so he's got his points back now. And then he attempts to destroy the missile launcher link team, which can shoot with special 6th sense level 2. So it's my 4 dice needing 13s versus his 2 dice, which need 11s, because we're factoring in no, in fact he needed, I think, 8s, because it was at the 0 range band and he's up against cover and mimetism. I can't quite remember the exact range. He may have been at the 16 plus. Either way, I failed the face-to-face roll and got blown up by a missile launcher, even though the odds were a bit better for me. So to be fair, during this game I've had some good luck with my immobilization of the Ruishui and getting the crit with the Guangxi shooting Yujimbo, and a little bit of bad luck with the Hacktail being hit crit by a TR bot, and this Tiger being destroyed by the link team. So I'm happy that the dice have been reasonably even. Next image, we're going back to Yujimbo, who is continuing his little assault here and moving up, getting the koala straight into the Guangxi, which is destroyed, but the chain rifle hit in response I think does kill Yujimbo. No, the chain rifle doesn't kill him, but in a later turn the Shaolin monk comes around the corner and gets him with the pistol. Next image, it's now my turn to use my Ruishui, and the Ruishui moving up. I can't remember. Oh yes, so what he's targeting is the Tio camo marker at the top right, which turns out to be an Oniwaban. Now I want to pause here and say that I'm not a big fan of my opponent using Shinobu and the Onuwaban in the same list. I'll explain my reasons why. In wargames, if you have a model that's specifically good at doing one thing, and you take another one of those same models, usually if you look at all of the opportunities for that model type on the battlefield, there'll be the best opportunity for it, the second best opportunity for it, the third best, and so forth. And if you are allocating that model to the best opportunity spot for it, the other model typically gets the second or third choice, meaning that it just by virtue of the situation, it's going to be less efficient. Now, some people say, oh, redundancy is really good. You know, if one fails, you can use the other, or you can use this one here to do this, and the Onuwaban's very good at using his boarding shotgun elsewhere. I disagree. I think you should be using that model to fulfill whatever opportunities it has and rely on that one thing playing a role in your list, giving you enough points for everything else. If you take both of them, you're just really strapping yourself for cash. He's got so many models in this list which can be offensive. He's got Yojimbo, he's got the Arigoto, he had 2 attack bots, and then you've got Shinobu and the Onuwaban. I really felt like what he could have done is actually bulked out the second order group, or had some stuff at the back which would have been better for scenario, or just maybe providing better arrows. You may disagree. I mean, my JSA list, which I'll be playing soon, is very similar to his, just with a few differences, and one of them is that instead of taking an Oruwaban, I'd be taking a ninja killing hacker, because that is something which fulfills such a different role than Shinobu, although it's still very useful and you can put it in the same list. So that's my thoughts on that. Next image, Onuwaban's been discovered, so the Rouge is shooting at him. Luckily the Onuwaban manages to dodge his way to safety after a couple of orders, but not by the end of it, and after another photo here, you can see he's dodged around behind cover, but the Rouge catches up with him eventually and destroys him. The next photo here shows a bit of an overview zoom out from the table. The Rishui is in the center, is gone into suppression fire, not coming around the corner because the missile launcher and TR bot would just eliminate him like that. But my opponent's severely down on points now because he's lost a Nonuwaban, he's lost a bike, 2 attack bots, he's lost a couple of line troopers, he's lost Yujimbo now because the Shaolin monk's taken him out. So in his third and final turn, he really needs to go after an expensive model such as the Hack Tau. Next image, Shinobu appears, and you can see where she's situated. She can actually shoot the back of the Ru Shui, but the Hack Tower is prone, so it's very hard for her to get line of sight to him beyond the edge of that building. And even if she does, him shooting back, it's hard for her to eliminate that last wound because he's effectively armor 8 against her combi rifle, so the chances of him dying aren't that great for her. Next image, she decides to go around the other side, and quite a cinematic photo of her firing at the Shaolin monk who managed to dispatch Yojimbo with some dedicated pistol fire. So the combi rifle takes the monk down. Another image here has Shinobu climb down the side of the building and move around to try and kill the other monk who attempts to throw a smoke grenade but doesn't manage to win the face-to-face roll, and the monk dies as well. But again, as you guys can see, just losing lots of smaller 4 or 5 point models, but she's just not really getting the points netting that she needs to. Another image here, this is my third final turn. I've got another Guilang Forward Observer, represented by a sniper. He actually has a combi rifle, picking up some stuff from the panoplies to earn me a point, and then in the next photo, staying prone, moving down the staircase without getting line of sight to the missile launcher, and making sure he ends up zone of control of the HVT to get myself a classified. You can even see Shinobu in the background there. So that ends the game. Pretty decisive win for my forces with the YuJing vanilla, but it was a really fun game as usual against Garth. I liked his list in some respects. He's changed it around from his old list, which had the Domaru and the Haramaki, which were very good. I just feel like either you take the Onuwaban or Shinobu and you drop one of them and use their points for something else that plays a different role. In my case, it's the ninja killing hacker device. I also use Kizuragi because I like her. But all in all, the rest of the list is pretty solid, and I agree with most of the choices he's got there. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. We'll see you again soon.